the FNL Network talk show.
All right. Well, welcome to another excellent episode of the FNL Network talk show. Today, I'll be leading the charge again. I'm Corey Stowe, and joining me for the episode will be Dave. How you doing, man?
Hey, guys.
And then we got Lillee Jean.
Hi.
And Holly. So how
Hi.
you guys all doing today?
Good.
Good,
Loving
good.
life. Tired of this wind, but I'm good.
Rainy here. Very rainy.
Yeah, it keeps jumping between it. As Dave and I's famous saying out here in California, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
Right.
We keep bouncing between the two, so.
Last week it
All
was
right.
80, 90. Now didn't get down to 50 with 70-mile-an-hour winds. I spent half my day yesterday trying to fix all my grapevines that ripped out of the wall. So
No.
yeah, I was able to fix it. Thank God for my nephew. He caught it, and I was out front and goes, "Hey, did you take all your grapevines down?" And I said, "No, what are you talking about?" Ah, crap. And I went and looked, and sure enough, the wiring just popped off the wall. So he helped me out. We got it all back up, so we're good to go.
Awesome.
Love
right, guys,
grapevines,
so,
but they're crazy.
Let's get started here. As I do this, if any of you guys, I'll give you each a turn, but if any of you guys kind of wants to jump in or you have something to say, of course, just go for it, right? So our first question is going to be about education and discipline in education. So as educators strive to maintain order and foster a conducive learning environment, well, the balance between discipline and freedom becomes pretty critical. So let's discuss together the extent of autonomy that students should have across educational stages, the role of teachers, parents in this dynamic. So in the spectrum of educational discipline, from elementary to college, where should we draw the line between maintaining order and allowing freedom? Like, how can teachers, students, and parents work together to foster both discipline and personal responsibility? And Dave, you are an educator, so I'm going to start you off on this one.
Damn. Well, I live in California, and you know as well as I do that our hands are tied when it comes to how much control we actually have over the classroom environment. There's only so much we can do. I do work at a high school that is, above and beyond the discipline levels. It's gotten to the point where administrators' hands are tied because of the fact that they don't want to get they don't want to be in trouble from the district. They don't want to deal with all the lawsuits that come through. And so they try in every way, shape, or form to pretty much bend the sphere, push people around, find other ways to take care of it. And one of those things that they did this year, we have a thing called PBIS, which is basically getting kids to take control of their actions around the school in itself. In theory, it's a great idea because we're teaching things like what we have there is what's called BARK, where it's brilliance, accountability, respect, and kindness. And unfortunately, most of the kids look at it as a joke. Some of them they'll look at it and say, okay, I can do it. So what they ended up doing is they got a couple of teachers on campus, one of them being me, and we have good rapport with kids. So they've asked us to go around the school, and I cover during fifth period. I'm a mentor, and like the principal called me the truancy czar, so to speak. And I, for the most part, I taught kids back into class. I've tried to use every tactic that's possible. I've got a good rapport with them, so I can usually get them back in there. There's that 1%, and that 1% seems to screw it up for everybody. And I've had a couple. For instance, I had a student that I brought to our CAW, which is the truancy officer. And, he said, well, we got to make sure that we're documenting it. I'm like, all right. So I went back and looked, and this student, she had hundreds of documentation. So when I went back to him and said, how many more documents do we need to be able to do something? And he said that the problem that we're having now is our DA refuses to take care of anything. They say they have to let him go. Well, just this last month, I found out in July 1st, state of California is coming out with a new law, and that law that we have to follow means that any child that is openly defiant, we cannot touch them. We have to let it go. So we get this situation now where, okay, now it's up to the parents or it's up to the student, because as a teacher, you have to play the fine line of being a nice person. You have to find a fine line where you're watching how you say things, because a parent will not care half the time until they think that they can get money out of the school, or they think that, oh, I'm going to get my child on something, I'm going to get this teacher on something. And when it comes down to a teacher, instead of really backing up the teacher, it's almost as if the school district just moves you to another site. And we see this time and time again. Some teachers are losing their minds, and I'll be honest, I've come home before you know me, I don't really talk about what goes on at work. When I come home, I'm trying to enjoy life. I'm trying to enjoy my family, you just let it go. Knowing that I'm about to go back to, the, so to speak, prison the next day. And I think for the most part, parents need to get more involved. And they don't need to be involved where they just care only when their child's in trouble, and then they find a way to get their kid out of trouble. And they don't necessarily need to be helicopter parents either. What they need to do is take responsibility at home. It starts at home, and we all know this. Everything starts with the parents. I can look at a kid, and I know I hate to say it, and people say you shouldn't say that out loud, but the truth is I can talk to a kid for about 5 minutes and realize real quick that the parents do not care, or the parents are probably just as bad, if not worse than them. And this happens quite a bit. For instance, I had a student that was, high as a kite, smoking out, called the parent came in, and I got a contact high just from the parent when she walked in. And I was like, never mind. I know what's going on here. So for the most part, I don't know, unless something changes at the state level, if something changes with our district attorney, if something changes where they start making laws that hold parents and students accountable, it's important. Now, they do have something where if the truancy officer does write a ticket, it's almost up to $700 now. Unfortunately, they very rarely write them. And when they do write them, the parent, and this is what doesn't make sense to me. A student who is normally a good student, who normally gets to class, does the things they need to do, if they get off track, they get a letter. I had a student the other day get a letter from the court saying, hey, you have more than 10 absences. Your parents are going to have to pay a fine or do a year in jail if they don't take care of this situation. Why do they keep going after these good students? Yet I have other students who have 150 to 160 absences. Nobody says anything. So I don't think that they're actually going after the people that they know, financially probably won't be able to pay their tickets in the first place. But they'll go after families of parents that, have good jobs, that are good kids and are in good standing. And it's almost as if they're only picking and choosing who they want to punish or hold people accountable for. So as far as accountability goes, that's the biggest problem we have right now. And I do the best I can to hold kids accountable daily. And it comes to a point that if you do it so many times, you get reprimanded for doing that. And so right now, I think the only way that anything's going to change is if we start off with at the state level, and our leaders, we need our leaders to step up to the plate and not be afraid of lawsuits. And that's the problem we have. They have too much power in the parents' hands and the child's hands, and there's no power in the teacher's hands, and there's only half the power in an administrator's hands. So, it's easier to punish the teacher, because the union will back you up and just push you to another school, and then you just get pushed away, versus stepping up and saying, no, this teacher's doing what's right, and that's what you need to do. And they don't do that.
So without the if we're not having the cooperation of the parents and therefore the students and stuff, is there, barring all of that, which obviously is necessary, I agree with you. Is there anything you've seen that is like any kind of effective disciplinary actions that you have seen that kind of balances some of this? Is there any ideas there that may not work from what you may have witnessed or seen?
Coming from my point of view, I'm a coach. I coach athletics, and I've coached for 30 years plus. I've got good respect for the kids. I can joke around with them, have a good rapport with them, to the point where I'm like, hey, look, if you keep doing this, I'm gonna make you do wall squats, or I'm gonna make you do push-ups. Technically, I can get in trouble if a parent really wanted to push it. Why do I say that? Because about a couple months ago, I had a student that she was actually failing 6 of her classes. And her parents found out she was getting in trouble. And so they came after me, and for no apparent reason other than the fact that I gave her ammo. And the ammo was, when my students come in after 4th period, they're usually rowdy because of lunch. The counselors are known to put the worst of the worst kids in my class because I can usually handle them. And sometimes they get rowdy. And I usually do this technique where I say, those can hear me clap, and then they'll clap. And then I'll say, those can hear me clap twice, they'll clap twice. If anybody's talking after that, then, everybody starts calling them out. However, sometimes they get rowdy. So I would put on another technique, which was pretty much a dog whistle from YouTube that sounds like a, if you're getting a hearing test at the medical facility, and you put it on and people over 25 can't hear it, you can kind of feel it. And so the kids would be like, oh, what's that noise? Oh, hey, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Well, that would work every once in a while. And I did that very rarely. But once I got called in 3 months later after the fact, because I hadn't done it in a while, I got called in, and this girl had told her parents. Her parents went and said they're going to get a lawyer, and saying that in the state of California, that's considered capital punishment. And I looked at my VP and said, wait a minute, does that mean I can't, do what about wall squats? He goes, oh, you're a coach. That's fine. And I just looked at him and said, I'm confused. He goes, let's just not do that anymore. And I'm like, okay, so I teach anatomy and physiology and health, so he said, oh, by the way, don't talk about pressure points. That's what we talk about in that class. Then he said that she also brought up the fact that I had said that girls do not need to pound their face with tons of makeup and wear skimpy outfits just to be attractive, because of the fact that, they said they could be loved just who they are if they'd stop doing this and stop following these YouTube videos. And that was part of one of the topics we were actually talking about in the health class itself, about self-image, and she used that, and the parents were looking for any excuse they could, rather than hold their daughter accountable, to get me in trouble, to deflect any kind of problems with her child. They ended up moving her to another class, and right off the bat, she's already failing that class. So it doesn't help. They move them around. But it upset me that, they put me on blast for this when I'm just doing everything in my power to be able to hold their child accountable. So for the most part, I do really good with getting the kids, they know if they piss me off, you don't want to make me mad, and I do a good job with that. Unfortunately, sometimes these kids have other issues, and those issues go beyond. And me being a mentor, my job is to take them aside, sit down with them, and find out what's really happening. And I had a girl a couple months ago where that actually worked out really good, and she was just completely just off the charts. And after we sat down, turns out she was a foster child that was having trouble. She was getting into drugs, and she started crying because I realized what was going on. And I said, hey, how can we help you? What can I do to help you? And about a week later, she got on IS, and 3 months later, I get an email from her thanking me. She said she found God. She's been off drugs and clean for 3 months. She thanks me profusely, for changing her life and helping her out. And at the same time, she said that she was one of those people that was always defending me on, Google Classroom, and she would never say anything bad about me, just to my face, because I was the only person that would step up and say anything to her, and she didn't like that. So holding kids accountable, we take a beating doing it, but for the most part, the backing isn't really there. So that's very difficult.
I can see that. So piggybacking on everything he said, Lillee, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any ideas of how schools should involve parents without overstepping boundaries or undermining the teachers?
I mean, obviously, I'm not an educator like you guys, and every day, you're making kids better and all these things. But I think it's hard for me to ignore that I feel kids can be hooligans. And I feel like the internet has shredded every neuron in that frontal lobe area.
Right.
I'm 23, so I grew up with the internet, but I feel like people within my generation who are just like, maybe let's say like 17 and younger, that's kind of like they're in school. They might smile at you guys in school, but they're going home on Twitch and shit talking somebody. That's just the way it is. And they're smoking weed while doing it because weed is legal, right? So it's all okay. Dad is smoking, so I'm smoking. Everybody's smoking around me. There's lots of factors here. They go home and it's shit. And this is the problem. The parents are they're dealing with economic problems. They're dealing with so many problems with this government right now that is affecting children in a way that I don't know how they're going to be in 10 years. I don't know. I mean, you guys are helping them, through being a mentor. You, David, and Corey, you do history, right? You teach that sort of stuff. So, these are great things, but they go home. And a home is not always home.
If they even have a home. We
Yeah,
have a
it's
tremendous
terrible.
amount of
It's
homeless children
terrible.
in our district.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible. So when we say accountability, it's like you have to be sensitive about the fact that there could be something wrong. And, everybody always goes to, oh, it's, this mental illness or, oh, it's that. But sometimes it's just the kid is disturbed because something's going on that sucks really, really bad. It's not always mental illness. Sometimes it's just, I don't like what's happening in my life. I want to change what's happening in my life, but I'm only 15 years old. I'm only 16
Mhm.
years old, and I can't do that. So, the accountability part, I don't know. I feel like it's difficult because it's not really my place, but I understand like a lot of sides of it. I'm not blaming, parents for not having money or being able to facilitate something for their children, but it's very difficult because ultimately, I guess it goes back to upbringing, how somebody's doing. So can't speak for
Unfortunately, a lot of
everyone.
these parents send their kids to school expecting us to work miracles. They don't want to do it at home
Like a
at all.
babysitter. I
Yep.
mean, yeah. You know what's interesting? I think I don't know where this is. They're doing this in one school district where it's like the whole day. Did you guys hear about that? They
Mm-mm.
go to school for like, I don't know, let's say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night, and the parents pick them up. It's an underprivileged community, and the parents love it because the kids get their meals, they do their homework in the school, and then they go home, bed, that's it.
Sounds like
So
China.
no, it's happening in America. I'm not really sure, but the parents that were interviewed, I gotta find it. They were like, this has improved not only the children's grades, but their demeanors, and everything else because kids are going home to nothing. They're not eating. These are realities in life. Not everybody is a millionaire who could afford a Tesla. So the reality is most of us are struggling, and it's just like an experiment they're doing, and it's working for that school district. They said the kids are like better behaved. So I don't
Hmm.
know.
I'd be interested to see what type of discipline that they do for the kids that do get out of hand.
Yeah.
Because I mean, really, that is a problem in our school. They're just allowed to just move them to another quad, move them around, push them over here. You call security, security picks them up, walks them over to another spot and drops them off, says, get to class. And they're not going.
Yeah.
And we joke around that, it's like, hey, why do you break out of one cell just to run around the prison? It makes no sense to me. At least when we were kids, if we ditched, we left the entire school. You're not going to get caught that way, and took the chances on mom and dad finding out later. So yeah, I agree with you on that one, but
I have no desire to work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. though.
yeah, I mean,
I
either.
don't know what they're paying those teachers, but
I
must be
don't
nice.
I don't even know how people escape. I know that before I transitioned to online school it was 10th grade that I transitioned. In ninth grade, um every door has like security, like a lot of security. I don't even know how people escape. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
how they do it.
All
There's
right,
even
so
police outside.
all this together, Holly, what do you think the role of like self-discipline plays in student
I,
development? We were talking about
I
I asked about autonomy and whatnot. How much of that needs to be on them, and does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm kind of laughing too because I hear Lily's comment, and I used to be one of those kids. I would like ditch every single because
Oh my God.
I was in like a high school, like a beach high school, and so any chance I would get to like out to lunch, I would go, and then like the security was right back there as David's experience was. I had to go right back, and there was always a lady that stopped me and was like, "Where are you going?" Like dude, where do you think I'm going? I'm going to lunch. But do I really look like do I look like are you stereotyping me? I don't look like the cutting type, the cutting class type. Like this is a joke, really. Like I was so dorky when I was in high school, like so dorky. I was to myself and ambiverted and dorky. I was not at all like social. I was still trying to find my way. So that's funny. But autonomy, to answer your question, Corey, autonomy is a huge word. I think that when it's taken away, first of all, I think this accountability has just split, and I'm going to make this answer of mine short and sweet. There is no accountability anymore, and there is students. I read some of the articles that you sent. Are there's rioting, too much rioting going on, too much choice going on. I remember a time when students didn't have a choice. And
Mhm.
when you got home, you didn't have a choice. And in that generation, everyone knew everyone's kid, and everyone could say whatever they wanted to them. And the world was just, the communities were kind of a lot more balanced, because when you rode the same school bus together, you had the same classes together, you had the same, you went to the same neighborhoods, you went back home, you kind of had the same, like, you were in those little suburbs. That was like, you couldn't get by with anything, like anything, like, get your butt back home, or I'm gonna hose you down. Like, I know you're my best friend's kid, or you play with my kid and you're their best friend, but like, if you don't go back, and it's like 8 o'clock now, you can stay here till 8, you can stay here and eat with us, whatever, but you're going back home after that. Like, I miss those times, like that, were literally, that is not reality anymore. Like, that is zero reality. Everyone's rioting, everyone is in panic, there's zero accountability over what we say, over how we believe, over what we believe and what we cling to. And what's astonishing to me is the statistic of 40% or more of the government does this. They count up the fatherlessness neighborhoods and homes, and all of these neighborhoods, all of them, doesn't matter, the burgessi or the upper class, and or in between, which there's no in between anymore, is there? Or there's getting to that, and it's gotten more and more drastic, and it will get to more and more drastic. But the funny thing about that is they take they take an overall population, like it's a census, and that basically they and according to that, they build jail cells over who's going to get it, because they determine by their amount of education, by their circumstances, by our school systems, they're just going to be passed right in there. That is astonishing to me. That is not right. It is not fair. Teachers absolutely should be paid more. I agree with you on that, David. Teachers should be paid more. There should be a lot more boundaries with school systems, with teachers, the right teachers like you, who know, but then there are teachers that don't know and will abuse this power. I've had many teachers abuse me. I've had many encounters. I wasn't an A student. I grew up in classes, one of them, I'll just say it, was special ed. When you were in special ed, you were looked down upon. I mean, you didn't have that regular, David knows what I'm talking about. You didn't have that regular sort of, level of education. And it really wasn't my fault. Now, I excelled regardless of that, and I broke out, but it's just, there's just such of a lack today. There's so much more fear, and there's so much more right, and there's so much more violence embraced than there is the right thing. And in schools, God is out of the equation. And I'm not saying that from a religious view. I'm saying that from like an overall, there's no more beliefs. There's no more accountability. There's no more morality. Yes, there's not a whole lot of that going on. Kids are getting a choice over everything in the school systems, and that is not right. How are you to know if you need discipline if you haven't done something wrong? Yes, and the discipline comes in there, and there needs to be a pattern of that. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, no, those are great points. And I think that's kind of like you were bringing up education when we were younger. And it's like a lot of things when we were younger. Some of it was fantastic and great, but they've ran almost completely, and some of it needed to be fixed, but it's almost like we ran completely in the opposite direction now, right? Now they're going straight back to the other direction. I can't remember what state it is, so I'm not going to throw a name out there, but I know one of the states is talking about spanking again, because it's gotten so out of control now. And I don't think that's necessary. I think, like all the things we basically talk about on here, just balance, right? I think they should have more choice. I give them, and I know Dave's like this, they have a lot of choice in my class as far as everybody learns differently. Everybody does. So there's things I like for instance, you were saying when you were younger, you were in those special classes. They still kind of have those, but they're far more integrated now, right? Because there's people on varying different levels, and they don't always need to be completely separated. They need to be a part of the social groups and the social clubs and everything else just as much as anyone else does. So I like that, but some of them are starting to get away with murder with IEPs and 504s and some of these things, kind of saying, oh, well, they got this issue and that issue. And so the actual responsibility is being completely taken out of the equation. And then when you look at the prisons, like you're talking about, And I had the numbers on there. I think 30 to 40%, depending on state and federal, 30 to 40% have a history of mental illness. And this is, to me, sometimes just a lack of understanding those boundaries and the lack of consequences, and so I do think that we need to find a balance in this, and that was the purpose of the question. Where is that balance? And I think things go in cycles, and things go, they ebb and they flow, and I think we're going pretty far in the other direction. But that being said, some as far as it can go, I'm seeing a recent incident at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, saw a clash over the American flag, right? There was a protest. It was an anti-Israel protest. And they tried to take down the American flag on campus and put up a Palestinian flag, until a group of frat boys, and everybody keeps calling them frat boys, but they were fraternity boys, came in with some young women too. And they went up there and they protected the American flag, and they were getting stones and water bottles and all kinds of things thrown at them, and they were being called names. But this brings up the question about the influence of campus culture and that same role of discipline in higher education. So considering that UNC incident, is rising campus violence a result of leniency in the early teaching, in early school discipline? And how do we address the influence of cult-like academic environments and ensure that these students are properly informed? And we'll go ahead and start this one with Lillee.
I'm in New York City, so we experienced those riots at Columbia and stuff. And it's not my right to take away somebody's right to protest. But when somebody takes away my right to feel safe, to feel comfortable, or if I wanted to go into Manhattan to eat something, but I couldn't because everything was legit shut down. We're very sore here after terrorist attacks, even though it's been 20 plus years. It changes things. It really changes things. They had flags all over Columbia that were not American. They were waving them in Harlem, not American flags, and everybody does have the right to whatever flag you're proud of. But here in the city, speaking from some sort of experience relating to your question, it's really freaking scary. It's very scary seeing those flags because of everything that's happened. So the fraternity boys and girls who put back the American flag and protected it, I heavily agree with, because we are Americans here, and everybody has the right to feel what they feel and believe what they believe. But violence, like throwing rocks at the students, is how do you support that? How can you say that's American? That is not American at all. So I just, it shook me. I was so scared when this happened in New York City. You guys, I couldn't. It was very scary. And the mayor here, he said something to the effect about flags, that the only flag in New York City should be the American flag. We're so sore. And I think that these protests on the campuses, you have teachers talking with students about, the Israeli and Palestine war going on, and they're influencing the students in a way that is not good. There are students that are becoming very radicalized. There are professors who have been arrested at these rallies not because they're protesting, because of the violence. They're scaring people. They're throwing things, and this isn't okay. I think that I believe that in New York, at least, there were outside agitators who actually went and taught students how to make weapons, how to barricade, all these things. So we have like this big issue going on. Campuses are radicalized by terrorists. That's it. It's a terrorist group. That is what's happening. And I think that Americans, even if, your child is 20 or 22 or whatever, I think that Americans need to talk to their children and let them know that, like, you need to, like, if you feel like Free Palestine, go ahead, but keep your head on your shoulders that there is like outside agitators happening. And even if you're pro-Israel, you need to be very careful and know that there are people around who are going to like jump on that and try to get this into a riot. There's no way anything happening now is not turning into a riot. I mean, you guys see it all over America. In Australia and Solidarity, they did this at campuses too. I agree with the campuses for suspending the students. If you're going to be violent, you're literally violating the rules. So I completely agree. I think that over here, Colombia, the president, she should have acted a lot sooner. There was anti-Semitism on that campus for weeks. This could have been prevented. So there are so many avenues here, but the first one is I'm an American. So, I feel a certain way about this.
Yeah, for sure. So, Holly, do you believe that certain ideologies are being promoted at the expense of critical thinking on campuses?
Yes. And I truly do believe I really, really, okay, let's go back to the baby boomers generation, because that was the article that you sent, the baby boomers generation that is basically knowing, from what is it, Reagan? There was an article from what it was Ronald Reagan, right? Not Kennedy.
Yeah,
No.
there was one on Reagan, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ronald Reagan. Okay, so basically what he did was he made those students pay, correct? He kind of divided this group up, so to speak, in this article, right? Like he was like, okay, you want to do this, kind of do this on your own time type of thing. Like he put people at a price, right? There's not enough of a price. Yeah. So you're in other words, what I think we could all agree on is okay, you do this, pay the price.
Yeah.
Whatever you are. If you're for this, okay. If you're for that, okay. Pay the price. You don't just get off. That's not the way. Like she said, that's, we're American. I love that Lillee said we're in America. I'm with her. There's no prejudice there. We are an accepting nation, everybody. Like come on. We couldn't accept you more right now. I mean, for heaven's sake. Stuff needs to be kind of backed away, So as far as, we have lack of boundaries, we're saying, hey, come on. So basically in that way, no one's paying the price. And there's a stream of violence going on, and it needs to stop. Just because, I'm with Lillee. Patriotism just kind of needs to form a little bit more. Yeah. I am not saying that we're against anything, but there's definitely an invasion of boundaries here. There's definitely a problem with that. Though the walls are definitely down, and honestly, others are taking advantage of those walls down. And there needs to be a price paid. Hey, if you want to do this, go ahead and do this. But guess what? Your tuition's going to get turned off. It's going to get cut off right now. Boom. I think that's the best way to solve the problem. Make them pay whatever price it is.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody's doing something right, because there were, like I said, young gentlemen and women who did step up to the plate at great peril to their own physical safety, and they stepped up and made that happen. And I definitely appreciate them for that. And it's tough, and it's hard to understand how this is happening with these professors, considering that I'm not pro-Palestine on this issue or whatever, but if a bunch of pro-Palestine students were having people throw rocks and bottles or somebody was desecrating something of theirs, I'm not even on their side about this, but I can't imagine not only not being involved in that, but stepping up to help, to be protective of the other side of this thing. And that's what critical thinking, that's what university is supposed to be about, is this critical thinking and the idea of how do we put ourselves in other people's shoes? How do we, you have to be taught, as we were oftentimes, you have to play devil's advocate at times. So all these anti-Israel protests, it's kind of like, well, why don't you be Israel and argue on the side of Israel for a moment? Because when you play devil's advocate and argue for someone or a thing you disagree with, one of two things happens. You either understand them better, or you understand what you believe even better, right? But it's a powerful thing. That's what critical thinking is all about. And that's definitely not happening when you have a bunch of students that name any comedian out there can walk around on these campuses and ask them the most basic questions about history or English or anything. And they're all completely unaware, language arts that is, and they're completely unaware of the most basic answers, but they apparently are fully aware of what's going on in the Middle East. And they know exactly what's going on between these two, to the point where they would violently attack people who disagree. That's a passion for something that is more cult-like to me than it is born of knowledge or critical thinking. And before we move on, David, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was military, and so you know as well as I do, the flag needs to be on top, no matter what. People forget what that represents. That flag represents the freedom that we have as Americans. It represents every single solitary soldier, woman, man, child that has died, making sure that we have that freedom. And people that come into this country need to remember that, yeah, you know, hey, you know, we have flags here for different cultures. That's fine. The American flag still needs to be on top. And I believe in the education system itself. This started about 10 or 15 years ago when we took the Pledge of Allegiance out of the schools. I'm not saying every school does it, but the majority of them did. When
We
you
still
started
do.
seeing,
I didn't realize they cut those out for you guys. We still do the Pledge of Allegiance.
they'll do it every once in a while, but when they do it, nobody holds anybody accountable. Nobody stands up. Nobody does a Pledge of Allegiance. They just say it. They'll say it real quick, and everybody talks through it. We took that out. There's no pride in being an American anymore. About 5 years ago, no, 3 years ago, we had an individual that had said that they were going to do the Pledge of Allegiance over intercom at second period, and took "In God We Trust" out of it, took, you know, freedom out of it, took everything out of it. It was like, what are we doing here? So I believe that our young children, you know, these new generations, the ones that are standing up for that flag, I beyond a shadow of a doubt believe that their parents are involved. They've taught them right. Kids don't just go to school nowadays and learn that on their own, because we're not teaching it. We're not allowed to teach it, in fact. And that's one of the big issues that we have. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating for me, because I have friends that have died, you know, making sure that that flag stands for what it's for. And, you know, I told you the other day when we were talking, um, I was a little frustrated. You know, it was Friday night. I was not in a good mood about something else. And for me, I'm frustrated that our politicians, we don't have the leaders that need to be up there that are doing this. And any leader that's trying to do it gets shot down right off the bat and has to dodge bullets and dodge rocks and dodge lawsuits and everything else just to be able to get up there and lead. And we're not doing that. You know, I think, and honestly, and this is just my opinion, I believe 100% that other flags have been put up that represent a freedom to radicalize and be what's the word, anarchist. This country is turning into an anarchy. And you know, when I was a kid and a teenager, yeah, we yelled, "Oh, I'm an anarchist," joking around, you know, because power against people. Heck, our parents were boomers, you know, of course we're going to fight back. Our parents were either hippies, Vietnam vets, or whatever, and telling us we can't do this, we can't do that. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you know, we went out and got jobs. We went out and took care of ourselves. We were the latchkey generation. We did the things we needed to do. You know, as long as we got home for those rules, we had certain rules. Got to be home by the time street lights are on. You know, your dad calls you. You don't say what. You get in there and see what he needs. We had accountability, and like Holly was saying earlier, you know, if you got in trouble off the block, you got beat by almost every parent on your way home, you know, for embarrassing them. And then you got beat by your parents
Those
when
were
you
the
got home for
days.
embarrassing them again. Yeah. You got held accountable. You knew, hey, I'm going to do this and
You
I'm
paid a
probably
price.
going
You
to
knew it
get
was
punished
coming.
for it. Is it worth it? You know what? When it came to my mom, it was kind of worth it because it didn't hurt as bad until dad got involved. Then I was like, holy crap. All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know? And, but we don't do that anymore. Kids are not, I mean, you could sit down, you know, if I got angry about a kid not standing up and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and they say, well, that's not my flag. Well, what the hell are you living here for? Well, I also have to deal with the fact that some of these kids, they're not American. And I'm thinking to myself, but you're in a place that's allowing you to come to school for free right now. You're in a place that's allowing you to get money for free. You're in a place that's giving you these opportunities, and you're not proud of that. Why did you come here? And that's where my frustration comes in with it. So I'm proud of the fact that those kids stood up for the flag. And Corey, to kind of go off of what we were talking about the other day, it's out of sight, out of mind for me here where I'm at in the town I'm in, because I don't see it. You know, I don't have to go and save that flag. But if I was there, I'd be the first person over there pulling
Right.
that flag up too, taking a beating and fighting for that flag, because at that point it has nothing to do with everybody in that that's around me at that point. It has to do with what I did when I went in the military and I said that oath. It has to do with my grandparents. It has to do with my uncles. Everybody that's came before me. It has to do with the fact that if I continue to allow this to keep going the way it's going, we're not going to have a country for my grandkids when they get older. And this is
Legacy.
ridiculous, and it pisses me off. And the more I talk about it, the more angry I get, because that's when I step up. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, always joking, making jokes. But Corey, when I told you the other day, it's not my problem, I'm pissed off. It's because I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that nobody steps up to plate. We keep spinning our wheels. And the sad thing is during the Vietnam War, all those colleges were doing it with the hippies who didn't want to go to war. They were just trying to find ways to go, love, sex, and rock and roll and do everything they needed to do. And those people got jobs later on. And guess what? They became professors. And now they are integrating the young generations, the Z gens, these young kids are integrating and planting these seeds in these kids, and they know what they're doing. Hey, go out there, have at it. Piss them
And now
off.
they don't know how to cook.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to work on a car. They don't know.
Work
They
the
don't
land.
know how to sew. I mean, we've gotten rid of all that. Where are we going to? Idiocracy, the movie, is the dumbest movie ever, but the most prophetic movie I've seen in years.
They're
And
even wearing the Crocs now.
the Crocs now. It's
That
so
movie made fun of
Oh, the
Crocs
Crocs
before
are bad,
Crocs were a
guys.
thing, man.
The Crocs aren't good. It's not a
uh,
thing.
as
Nathan, I'm sorry.
it's
No.
it is. It's a sad
Uh,
situation. It's a
They're
sad
gardening
situation.
shoes.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you say that,
Thank
because
you.
my buddies
That's
know
what
how
we
much
keep
I
saying.
hate
They were like
Crocs.
gardening shoes, right?
Yeah,
My
I mean,
buddies
people
know.
wear
hey,
them.
those are where, yes. Or
My
go,
buddies
go,
know how
go.
much I
Yes.
hate them, so they bought them. They bought some camouflage ones, calling me country and putting the snow show on them. So
Nice.
guess what I wear them for? When I'm outside working in the yards, because
Gardening.
whenever I step in dog crap, I can just rinse them off. So
Makes sense. Very
but you
useful.
won't
They
catch
got
my
their
ass wearing
uses.
those down to the store, though.
Oh man.
Hey, you can. Hey, everyone's got a choice now. It's that word choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got a reputation to uphold. And I got brothers who'll never let it down if they caught me with the Crocs outside of my property.
Hey. Yeah, I think that you're right about a lot of that, David. There's a level of when I'm talking about personal accountability, I think it's huge, because it's just like you're saying, there's not a lot of like, you reach a certain age where you can't blame your parents anymore for your decisions and choices, right? When we're getting into the elementary, yes, but at this point, your parents have basically sent you off, and you still have the same cross section of people whose parents are not paying attention, not focusing. They're just busy about their lives. And then the ones that pay attention. And I think it's pretty clear to us, the ones that have that connection to the legacy, the ones that recognize what the flag is about, they're the ones that are embracing that and saying, hey, there's something important here to preserve. And I think that's a huge difference. Why I say it's cult-like, because I compare it to, gangs were huge in the 90s when we were younger. It was like a big deal. It's still an issue, obviously, but it's not the same kind of issue. But I see the exact same types of tactics being used. Kids who do not have what they feel is a sense of family being drawn into, well, now all of a sudden I matter. And what do I matter for? I matter because let's save Palestine, or little Palestine, or whatever the cause, whatever the issue. They just want to be a part of something, which is not new. It's been going on, like you said, since the hippies. Some of them went off to war, and the ones that were left behind had to feel like they were doing something important also, right? And that is huge. It's underrated how huge that is, because during World War II, you had a generation of people that, when some of them couldn't go because of medical issues, they were killing themselves out of their shame, out of the desire to go out and do this was huge. Those same people that are always there, and those same people weren't allowed, or that didn't make it to Vietnam, or didn't get drafted, or didn't really want to go, but didn't go, they were left with those same feelings of emptiness and feeling like, what do I do? How do I get involved? How can I be a part of this? How can I be a part of something important? That's always going to be there, always going to be there. And I think that people are always going to prey on that as well. And that's why I say cult-like. They are drawing them into where you don't know that much about the world, but you're completely convinced that you're so right about this that you'll throw rocks and water bottles at fellow students because they disagree with you. Right. And where's that passion even coming from when couple years before, you couldn't have cared less about school. You know what I mean? And then from that, some of the things we're seeing. So I think there's that same cross section: good parents, good students, bad students. You know, that's one of those times I don't believe in a balance. I think there needs to be a lot more good people than there are bad, right? But historically, moving on, times like this, times of great discord, often do call for decisive leadership, right? Sometimes it's that one kid that stepped up to protect that flag and the other ones followed. That's the way the world kind of works sometimes. You really sometimes only need one example. I'm reminded, I didn't put this in there, but I'm reminded of the story of the sub 4 minute mile, right? The sub 4 minute mile, humans couldn't run under 4 minutes, run a mile in under 4 minutes. And this is supposed to be an impossibility, right? And from all the way back to Greek times and all the knowledge that we have of it up into the 1930s, we still have doctors telling us can't do it. It's physically impossible for a human being to do this. And a man comes along, decides he's going to do it in the 1930s. And he does it. He does a sub 4 minute mile, right? And nobody had ever done this in history that we know of. And within 6 months, some 50 something other people accomplished it, right? They just needed that example that, hey, that one person that comes along and says it's not impossible, it is possible, right? You can have, like David said, the 1% or 2% that's in the negative side that can be the bad apple that ruins the whole barrel. But also we have leaders who can step up to the plate and lead the cause if people just believed in themselves more, right? So we do have this unrest, and we have very similar unrest for many years. And particularly I gave you guys examples of like the 1980s where almost the same thing was going on. But we had a leader like Ronald Reagan. He was governor at the time, and he took firm action, right? During all times of crisis, but particularly on the campuses, he sent in the National Guard. He went, he tried to talk. He saw that the professors were they just weren't bending on anything. They weren't being reasonable. So he says, fine. The consequences like Holly was talking about. So do you guys feel we need similar strong leadership today to manage fringe violence and bring society closer to some sort of middle ground? And Holly, we'll start with you on this one.
So do we need a leader?
Yeah, do you think it's time that a strong leader is going to step into this? Because we're at a kind of a critical junction. Could go either way.
Right. I'm gonna make this one really short. No, I think that it's now in our hands. We've had leaders. We've had leaders sit up, stand up, and then we've had leaders sit down. We've had all types of. So it's really not, and I appreciate the question. We need somebody. We don't need somebody anymore. We don't need to look to someone. That attitude is what's going to get us in more turmoil. Oh, I'm going to look to this person. I do believe in looking to hope. I do believe in hope. I do believe in looking to a person, but for right now, it needs to be more in our hands. And I realize that, well, look at what that's done to society in the past. I get that. And I get the consequences I get where we're at essentially from that. But no, I don't think that there needs to be someone, I think that we have the power in our hands. We need to unite with it. We've been dealing with problems. We've been talking about solutions thus far, and we need to bring them all together, and we need to mix them up like ingredients for a cake and see what comes out, see what we bake this time, because it's in our hands as Americans now. We need to rise up more.
All right. Yeah, I could agree with you that because I talk about the cult of personality, and sometimes people have hero worship, and I'm very much against hero worship, but I still believe we need heroes and people that set that example of self-responsibility, right? So you're right. It always takes the group, but there's almost always somebody that takes that first step. So that's the kind of leadership. I'm not just somebody in charge that's going to control us, but leadership, somebody stepping into exactly what you're saying, to lead the cause, lead us all to go, yes, we can do this. That's all I mean by that. So, but yeah, I agree.
Our parents.
Yes. Yeah. You don't want the cult of personality where, no, this person can do no wrong. No, that's not acceptable either. So, all right. What do you think, Lillee?
I think that, at least in my experiences so far, most people seem to be followers. Most people seem to need some sort of example, even if it's something small. And if we want to just like relate things that have just happened right now, as soon as Mayor Adams in New York City said this is what's going on, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to happen, things shut up. The city became very livable again, and people ramped down. So that is an example of why you need a leader, in my opinion, because that made it, you could live here. It wasn't scary anymore. I don't believe in like, oh, this person's like God, everything they say is
Right.
wow. I don't, but like kind of like what Holly said, like it's nice to have like a hope sort of. I like that idea. I think she offers an interesting perspective about that actually, that it's nice to feel hopeful or you like looking up to somebody that way. But in times like right now, I think that the president should have spoken up a little bit sooner about the protests happening. That's my opinion. I feel things got very out of hand all over the country because his stance was very indecisive. One minute he's criticizing Israel, then he's funding them. And it's like people were like, what do I do? I don't know. I'm going to do this because the president did that. We saw this with Donald Trump when he was president, but the president said that online, so I could say that. And it became kind of a game of limits. How much can I go? So leadership goes really far. There's this documentary called America in Color. I don't know, it might be on Amazon. And it was pretty shocking, but I guess I understood it. It was with the president, it might have been Roosevelt, and there were protests, and he sent in tanks. They shot down everybody. It was very bloody. He was there with Firestone and somebody else. And, saying this, it's brutal, but they stopped protesting. So, so I don't know. It's a difficult thing. I'm not in that position to make these sort of decisions or stuff, but I do realize that a strong leader, whether it's something brutal like that or something like what Mayor Adams did, just calming things down, is really necessary because it changes the course of how life is going to be.
Mhm. I think a good leader could do both of those things and knows when the correct time and to do that and not to do
When.
that. So Dave, we're wrapping this up here, but what do you think of the risks and benefits of employing a strong-handed approach to civil unrest?
I agree with what Holly's saying to a certain extent. We have a country full of idiots and we have a country full of very smart people. And you could just go on social media in itself and look at the bannering back and forth, and you can see the
Yeah.
smart people versus the idiots. And the good thing is I think that, yes, we have enough smart people in this country that we can get the job done. However, we need somebody that can write the prescription. And what I mean by that is I have a pretty well extensive knowledge in medical field and orthopedics. I developed plantar fasciitis after I had my knee surgery, and I went through every aspect that I needed to go through to be able to heal my plantar fasciitis. I knew that I needed an actual brace to keep my foot at 90 degrees when I slept at night. And so I went through the consults, I did everything I had to do, finally got in there to the doctor, the ortho, and I come in there and he goes, "What's going on?" And I went down my entire list of all the treatments I did, with the medications I took, everything I did. And he goes, and he got kind of cocky with me and said, "So you already know what you need. Why do you need me?" And I said, "I appreciate that, doc, but you're the only one that can legally write that prescription." And he goes, "Touche." Wrote the prescription. I was healed in a week. My point is if we have a leader they can make those subtle laws, make those decisions where we can have a million of us can all complain and say, hey, we need to get this done. But the thing that people are forgetting, we're not getting a leader that leads us. We are getting a leader that works for us. And we have to vote the right leader in that takes care of the things that we want as the people, not a
And
guy.
recognizes that reality
And
that he
yes,
works for.
not a
Yeah,
guy that
versus-
gets in there and has an agenda that's being pushed by a complete different agenda of people that have money that can pay for it. We need somebody to get in there and say, I work for the American people. I'm the one that can write this prescription. I'm going to say we do this, this, and this, and let the people do the rest of the work. And that's what I agree with Holly. We need to all be able to say, yes, we want to fight this. But like I said, I'm a teacher. I know how to fix it. I know what I can do. You know how to fix it. You know what
Mhm.
you have to do. We all know what we need to do, We're just not allowed to do it. We get that leader in that says, yes, you can do this. I'm smart enough to say, hey, I'm not going that far. I'm not going to do something that's retarded and it's going to hurt you. I'm going to do something that's not only going to break you down, it's going to build you back up. I'm going to build you back up in a way where you're going to help yourself self-accountable. You're going to do the things you need to do. And you know what? Down the road, the only reason I'm even teaching is 1, so that I can be competitive in sports still, and 2, so that I can change a life. And if that's what I do for you, then that's what I want to do. And I hope every student I ever have, 10 years down the road, we become friends. I don't need to be your friend right now. Right now, you're going to hate me. But 10 years from now, we're going to be friends. I don't want to have to go to a bar and you're one serving me because that's all you can do. I want to find out that I go to a bar and I see you across the way. I'm like, oh, hey, how you been doing? What's going on? What's life like? And they say, hey, you know what? Thanks to you, you gave me some insight in how to do things in life. And that's what I want to be as a leader and a mentor and an educator, and at the same time, yes, we do need a leader that can write the prescription and do those laws. But at the same time, we have to be allowed to run the country, not overextensive government. We don't need somebody coming in and blowing everybody up and shooting everybody and knocking them out. Do I want sometimes to say, yeah, give me a beanbag gun so I can just shoot some of these kids putting their ear pods running by, ignoring me on purpose. And when I do call them out, they're like, yeah, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You know what? Give me, say that to me out in the streets. Say that to me. Would you do that in the streets? Oh, hell no. You'd kick my ass. Of course I would. So here,
David's ready
I
to
can't
go.
do nothing. Yeah, I'm like, I can't do nothing here. Okay, my hands are tied. So write me the prescription so that now I have some pull. And as Americans,
your hands are only tied because you're actually doing what society asks of you.
Exactly.
That's the thing that we got to get through to our students. So true leadership is servant leadership, in my opinion. But we're gonna wrap
David's
this up.
got street cred now.
The one quick question. Well, David,
cred.
just give me the name. If you could pick any fictional character to lead us through these times, who would it be?
Well, I love Indiana Jones because, I love his character. But if you want to be real, I'm going to have to go with Aslan. Aslan's the dude that I think, I think he'd be great.
Great answer
I think
to
he's
that.
awesome. I love Aslan, and he as well as I do what he covers, and he covers a lot of other aspects that a lot of people probably don't know unless they read about it.
All right, how about you, Lillee?
Wonder Woman, because
There you go.
it's Themyscira, it's balance, it's order, and I think she's very fair and she's strong, and yeah, I think she's nice.
Nice. How about you, Holly?
Mine's in between Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind, or Edmond Dante from Count of Monte Cristo. That character has gone through everything under the sun, and yet he comes out on top. He's like a phoenix. So yeah,
That's great. I'd have to go with Edmund between those two. You're right about that. I'm going to pick Aslan, David. That was actually, I didn't even think about that. That's hands down probably the best one. But all right, guys, I thank you guys for joining me today. That's going to wrap it up. So we'll see you guys next week.
Take care, guys.
Bye.